conquer and we're going to take some. Is that understood? Yes, sir. That's what we're going to do, sweetheart. We are going to go and get some. All right, people, on the ready line. Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! What are you? What are you?
The Exceptional Parent Magazine March issue covers helpful information on hearing, vision, and speech impairments. As always, there is a special military section as well. Sign up to read for free and receive the free monthly newsletter at epmagazine.com.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
I remember a time when I was in a not so good place, and these games and these activities and being able to come and have the camaraderie that we have here, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. There are people here that have been through what I've been through. It makes me feel like I don't know, I'm part of something great.
Just let yourself go. Give it a try.
How's it going?
Going well. It's that new guy energy.
Oh, he's back. That's the fourth time he's done that.
Is he peeking or probing?
Speaking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
We're seeing activity converging to your north and south.
This is Frogman 6 Romeo. We need evac at our last known position. We have severely wounded.
Who's the severely wounded?
It's not you.
Is it me? Who is it?
No, it's not you.
No, is it?
Copy 1, we're in contact 2.
You coming to you or you coming to us?
Stand by. We'll let you know when we're inbound.
Let's move!
Here's the plan.
EA 5 minutes, over.
The scouts are gonna lead us out, and I'm bringing up the rear. Pop smoke.
Smoke out?
We are all coming back.
OP1, they are en route to you.
3 minutes out! 3 minutes! Eyes on me and only me. Has anyone looked at you?
Claymore rock me, dude.
2 minutes out! 2 minutes!
Where are you guys?
Look for the blood and the smoke!
Multiple bad guys trying to get to our position.
Inbound! Inbound! Find cover!
1 minute out!
We have enemy on our building and all surrounding buildings.
Roger that, stand by. Going hot.
You gotta get ready, man. This is gonna hurt.
On my count. 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis, Marine Corps veteran and your host. Oscar Mike Radio is co-produced with Sinister One Productions. What's your podcast doing? I want to thank my sponsor, Joyce Asack of Asack Real Estate, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Fight Camp. Be your strongest combination. This is a rare treat. Well, I wish it wasn't so rare. But it's a rare treat when I get to talk to someone who didn't serve in the U.S. military, but served their country proudly and is willing to talk with me. And I hope that changes here in 2025. I want to introduce Philippa Bagley, who served in Queen and Country, or King and, well, yeah, it was Queen and Country at the time. And, you know, is my second British guest, but my first female military British guest. We had a really good time in the warm-up room. Philippa, welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Travis, thank you so much for having me with that wonderful welcome as well. I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. We met through David Willis's Tip of the Spear roundtable group, where a bunch of us veterans from different backgrounds and service branches get together, and just it's a round table, and you joined us. It was quite late. I was surprised because you're like 5 hours ahead of me right now. It's sunshiny outside and you're getting ready for evening tea, and you were a good sport. You took the ribbing and you weighed in on some really heady conversation we were having, and I'm like, yeah, I want her on the show. So I'm happy you're here. We've got a lot to talk about, and time always goes fast. So start me off with, who is Philippa and how did you get into the British military?
Great question. Who am I? I think I'm always learning that as I get older, right? The easy question is how I joined the military. And it was a very strange answer, probably. In my 20s, when I was 21, I actually lived in Russia for my degree, my first degree. And I got hit by a car while I lived there. And I lost all my coordination. I lost all my, I had to relearn all of that. I was obviously wasn't dead. And at that time, I went to university, or school as you guys call it, called Durham, which is quite has quite a lot of people who do like officer training corps. And when I came back from Russia for my final year, I was thinking, what do I want to do? And a lot of my friends were like, have you thought about the army? And I was already doing a lot of martial arts, I did a lot of other sport at university, and I went, sure. And so I literally joined the army to see if I was fixed from being hit by a car. That was my one reason at the time, was, can I do this after having this accident? And it turned out I could.
Let me get this straight, because I've heard all kinds of stuff. But let me get this straight. You joined the military to see if you were fixed from getting hit by a car in Russia.
Yep.
Philippa, that goes to the top of the list of my list of things I've heard about military service. This is going to be great. Okay, go on.
Well, I mean, after that, so I joined, initially I started off in the Royal Corps of Signals, so radios and satellites. And I did that for quite a while, but I was really, again, part of my fix, can I test myself? You're always looking for the next challenge. And so I really wanted to serve in Afghanistan. And at the time, it was, well, I joined in 2006, 2007. So I managed to go in 2010, 2011 to Herrick, what we called Herrick, 13 and 14. But at that point, the army had gone, oh, wait, you have a degree in Russian. Why are you in the signals corps? You should go and join the intelligence corps. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. You know, it's the army, you just go where you're told. And so I moved in the intelligence corps and they went, oh, you have a degree in the Russian. Go be an imagery analyst and work with drones. So I did that for a while, and that's what I did in Afghanistan. So I worked with our drones on the ops, working with in the army, in the British Army, the artillery actually run the drones. So I was what's called an individual augmentee. So they dropped me into the unit as a specialist, and I worked with the guys who fly the drones to do all the analysis of what was going on. And I came back and went, oh, you speak Russian. Actually, we could do with your skills now. So after about 8-9 years of not using Russian, they finally remembered that actually Russia exists and maybe isn't always a friend. And then I ended up doing Russian for the last sort of 4, 5, 6 years of my career there. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So, were you fixed? Did join the military affirm that you were fixed well and whole as well as you could be?
Well, well, I mean, I had to do a couple more things just to check. So every crazy thing that came up, I did. So I did like 100K in 24 hours. I did a marathon carrying 20K. In the signals, there's a thing called the lanyard trophy, which is like 40 miles up and down doing that. So I did all those things. And I suspect I was fixed. Now that I'm in my 40s, I discovered I've got a hip issue, which is probably from all the things I tried to do to see if I was fixed. But there we go.
This is the military experience, ladies and gentlemen. Did I hear you correctly say that you did schooling in Durham?
Yes, I did.
Now wait a minute. Hold on. We got to get this out of the way. So I watched a documentary called Sunderland Till I Die that's in the city near Durham, around Durham, and it's more than just a football team. It's more than just a football club. Excuse me. That club was the fabric of that city in Northeast England. Did you ever go to any of the matches?
I did, and this is a great fun fact. So from watching that documentary, you'll probably know that I don't have the same accent as the people in that team. I'm actually born in Durham. I was born in Durham. I have family who are from Sunderland. My mum is the biggest Sunderland supporter you can imagine. But when you're from Durham, actually, it's kind of a bit of a divide because you can go a bit further north and go to Newcastle, and there's another big team there, or you're Sunderland,
right?
And you cannot be both because this is the law. So yeah, my family was Sunderland. Actually, one of my college tutors at Durham was Newcastle. I mean, we mostly get on most of the time, but there were times when it was incredibly tense because you couldn't even really be friends with someone from Newcastle. And so it is a big deal. And yes, Sunderland until I die.
Well, it was that, and then I really liked the documentary where they talked about the East Durham Veterans Trust, a little nonprofit. I wouldn't say little, but it's a local nonprofit that served veterans there, and they were talking about how they use the football club to bring veterans together to watch football and be as veterans. And it was really touching, the documentary. They honored one of the British veterans there. I thought that was very fitting, and I'm not really never grew up with soccer, but when I check the English leagues, I always look for Sunderland, and that's for real. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
I mean, the thing about the Northeast in particular, and this is some British history for you. Once upon a time, we had a prime minister called Margaret Thatcher. I'm sure you've probably heard of her. And in the 70s and 80s, she shut down a lot of the coal mines, and there were many, many in the Northeast. And so you mentioned her name in the Northeast, and she is hated. All that aside, whether that was right or wrong back then is done, but it left the Northeast in a really difficult financial position. Like so many families would depend on those mines, and I know the same thing happens around the world when this kind of thing happens. And the communities we had, the mining communities, they were so tightly knit, and during the time we had protests, we had riots, we had people really, really struggling. And organizations like the East Durham Association became these real life-saving points of support for many, many people. Now, today there is still a north-south divide in terms of economics in the UK, and generally speaking, the south is richer than the north. And I'd say, generally speaking, you still have these tight-knit communities in the north that you don't quite see in the south. And a lot of it is because the communities that built around the mining then joined around these organizations, and of course, football. The one thing I will say about football or soccer is you will find that level of passion and loyalty throughout the UK. It is a thing, but what the North needed that the South didn't in the same way, not to say they didn't have hard times, was these centres of support and help, particularly recovering from the loss of the mining communities. And I said these days, still today, it is a poorer part of the country than the South is.
Well, I'm planning to go to the UK here in the next couple of years, and that is going to be on my list of things to do for certain. It was just really striking to me. You know, a lot of times sport is kind of seen as a extra, but you know, watching the documentary and then watching how they really took the time to honor UK veterans really, you know, hit me right here. So, well done, well done. You go to the military, you do all this stuff to prove that you're, you know, you got knocked around, but you're not out of the fight. All military service comes to an end, and for all of us, whether we like it or not, even Chesty Polar over here. What was your transition out of the military like after you'd gone through all this stuff, but then really turn up the throttle and said, I'm going to just live life to the fullest?
I think this is a shared experience. When I came back from Afghanistan in particular, it probably took about 9 months to readjust, just within the community that I was in. And the reason for that was because I was an individual augmentee. So normally, and you know this, we deploy en masse, we're with all our brothers and sisters, you come back en masse. With me, I kind of deployed on my own, was dropped into a unit, then pulled back out again on my own. And so, and which is for the intelligence corps, it's quite common because often you're just like dropped into wherever the intelligence corps needs you to go. But it does mean you then have this kind of lonesome journey of processing what you've seen, what you've done, people you've lost, people being injured. And I think leaving the military as well is a similar experience to that, because you're on your own again. And you know, you can't the jokes, the banter, the humor, the inappropriateness, the silly games doesn't always translate well to Civvy Street, as you can imagine. But I was very lucky in my first role was with a company called Lockheed Martin, which I'm sure you probably in the US you know quite well. And in the UK, it's not way not as big as the US, but they did take me on, and there's lots of ex-military there. So I think the transition was quite good. And I did corporate work for a while and lots of government contracts, as you might expect. But I loved working for Lockheed. They were great to work for, I have to say. That I bounced around some other corporations for a while, and I did also at the same time some reserve service as well. But I got to the point where I kind of just looked around me going, I'm not sure I want to die behind a desk. And I also don't know, whilst I do think with government contracts, you can take a sense of pride in that the work you're doing does matter. Like it isn't just for money, there's a bigger thing there. But it never quite satisfied my need to, you know, serve and to do community work. And so I started to look. And it was the pandemic that really hit me in terms of seeing my colleagues at the time suffer, military and non-military. You know, there was a lot of anxiety. You know, we've all lived through this experience. And that's actually when I kind of committed to retraining in therapy. And I think I'd say that every experience leads to the next one, right? You know, I could never plan my life. But I do think having seen people in the military and what we go through, and then even seeing corporate what people go through, you find there's a common humanity, and that's around connection, that's around purpose, that's around wanting to be useful. And for me, it was a reawakening of remembering kind of almost who I was. Like I joined these corporations because it's what you do and you get a good job, and then you realize, but I'm not being fulfilled, and I don't think I'm serving in the way that I could do.
So you were working, you had shelter, food, all that stuff, but something was missing.
Absolutely.
And I've come across this before, but it's a sense of purpose through service. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, definitely. definitely.
So you wanted to make a change, and you kind of reinvented yourself to offer, different types of services to be around people, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Okay.
My parents were a great service, well, are still great service people. And my dad was actually in the Navy. He then became a vicar, and
Oh
my mum's
wow.
been a teacher her whole life. Yeah. But do you know what? It's really common, apparently, because it's gone to my dad, for people who do like special forces kind of work to either really find God or really not find God. And so the number of padres, vicars, priests I know who have served in special forces or like in, in physical infantry roles, who've then become some sort of religious, you know, conduit, it's a whole psychological study right there. But my dad was one
Isn't
of
there
those.
some kind of saying, at least for us U.S., that there's no atheists in foxholes?
Yes.
I mean, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of truth to that. When you're getting ready to get your gear to go actually in a combat zone, all of a sudden, I don't know, it hits differently. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do think it's something about the human psyche or the need. Again, I think maybe it's that purpose thing again. It's like, why am I in this foxhole? Like, what, why am I being mortared and shot at? And why am I still alive and my friends aren't as well? Of course, that's one of the big questions I know a lot of us ask. And I think and I'm not going to judge on religion because everyone has their own thing, but for so many people, believing that there's a higher reason, whatever flavor of religion or spirituality that takes, it can provide comfort. And if it can provide comfort in those moments, then why not?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What was it like making that transition into serving people? Did you, a vicar is that the same as a minister here in the U.S.?
Yeah, Church of England equivalent.
Okay, so you had your father's example to look at in his pathway of being a vicar, and it can't be. I grew up in the Midwest and South. Being a minister is not easy on a good day, so you got a viewpoint into that. But what was
Mm.
your transition like, and did your father figure into that at all?
Um, so my parents are super supportive. I think if they went, I killed a man outside of the war zone, and they'd be like, okay, as long as as long as you learn something from it, they're very supportive. So I kind of didn't know where to start, so I started with just research in terms of, okay, so how do I do this? And the thing around people, as you and I both know, is come in all shapes and sizes, all flavors. But when it comes to the mind, we tend to assume that our fears, our worries, our anxieties are unique to us, but also that they are the worst in the world. And there's also a shame around that. So I started off by studying psychology and looking at different sort of talking therapies. But I like action. And I quickly discovered that talking therapies are great. But like in the veterans community, you don't always want to talk about your shit. You want to you want to cut through it, or you don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. Which then led me on to, first of all, a modality called neuro-linguistic programming, which is a very powerful tool. Neuro, brain, linguistic, obviously words, but it was my first real tool that I found that I thought, actually, this is something that can be really powerful. And once I kind of found that, then it led me down to the road of neuroscience. And that's where I think for me, I went, aha, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. This is the thing that I can learn, I can do, and I can make a difference.
I don't know much about NLP. I had a Marine Corps guest on who does NLP in the state of Tennessee. But as I understood when I read about it, is it's literally programming your mind to almost, in layman's terms, fix itself. It's that
Mm-hmm.
powerful. And it really showed me that the words you hear and the words you process internally are really like I guess how I would say this, Philippa, is the whole thing that sticks and stones may break my bones, but nasty words will never hurt me is not really the truth.
Absolutely.
So just go in for my listeners and watchers, what is NLP and how do you define it?
So it's a really great question, and that example is one I use, that words do
Oh,
hurt us. So with with the brain, we are constantly creating what's called a neuropathway. And that is how we do different things, how we respond to different situations, how we think. And those pathways, like in a field, they're trodden many over years. You see that pathway really strong in a field. What NLP does is it takes that pathway, if it's no longer serving you, and helps you to create a new one. But instead of having to spend years walking the same path, wearing down the grass, wearing down the roots, it can do it quite quickly. In some cases, exceedingly quickly. And the reason being is it works at the level of of your thoughts and of your behaviors. A really easy example, if you look at a phobia.
Okay.
So
I hate needles.
phobia.
I hate needles.
Okay,
So.
there we go. Right. So your hate of needles will have come from a number of different areas. It could have been from an experience as a child, could have been something you saw on TV or the experience as a child. So of course, the first 7 years of our life are the most formative. So a lot of our fears, that's really common, are born from something that happened as children. Now, we don't even know what these things are because we don't always remember, and it's so deeply embedded. But as you get older, the mind just explodes the fear to the point where you have these strong phobias. And the reason is that what happens when you ever get any kind of stimulus, you get a signal to a part of your brain called the thalamus, which is somewhere in the middle, and it goes up to your logical brain and down to your emotional brain. In every situation, no matter who you are, your emotional brain will always respond first, and that is your fight or flight response. So in your case, your emotional brain kicks in and it does whatever it does to you in those situations.
Like, I want to get out of here. No,
you got
I cannot believe I'm allowing someone to do this to me.
Right.
And this is weird. Like, yeah. Okay. So I'm yeah.
So now for other people, they may still have that response, but the logical brain goes, but you'll be fine, or don't worry, or it's just, it will rationalize it. But when you're stuck in the emotional brain, that signal doesn't come through. And with phobias, in fact, you produce a chemical that blocks out any logic at all. It's because it's trying to save you. It's your fight or flight kicks in, it wants you out there straight away. Now, the more this happens, the faster response is. And that's because there's another part of your brain called the hippocampus, which stores a template of behavior. So every time you have this experience, your brain goes, what happened last time? Oh, I didn't like it. Let's get out of here. And that becomes the pattern, that pattern. So with NLP, we shift that pattern. We break it very quickly and we give your hippocampus a new response, a new template. And so you stop having that response. And in the best case, with phobias, I always go, the outcome that I'm going for is neutrality. I'm not going to make you love needles necessarily. Like, you're not going to be like, hey, chuck another one in there. Can't wait. But you might be like, okay, I feel nothing. And that's a really good response because then you're no longer in fight or flight. That will make sense.
Yeah. That does make sense. And I remember the last time, I mean, it's ingrained in my mind. I remember I go back to when I was 5 years old every time. And it's like, this is not good. I will never get used to this. But that's really interesting.
And here's the other thing with the brain, okay? So the brain doesn't know what's real and what's not real, okay?
What?
So we can actually, if you think about, have you ever had a dream where you've woken up and been really annoyed or angry or upset about something?
Yes, yeah.
Right, that's because your brain doesn't realize it's a dream. Like in that moment, the brain thinks it's real. And so those emotions you feel are also real, which is also why I wake up annoyed at my husband sometimes and don't know why. It's because I dreamt he did something that annoyed me. And I go through the whole day and he's like, why are you annoyed at me? Like, because he did something in my dream. It's like, oh, it's a dream. Sorry. Yeah.
Character building.
Yeah. So the brain doesn't know what's real and what's not real. And as a result, we can basically lie to ourselves. I don't want to term it in that way, but we can take the memory of 5-year-old you and we can change the experience that your brain remembers. So we can change colors, change smells, change basically any one of the senses in that memory. We can rewrite the memory so that it no longer it produces that fear. And you can do that with trauma responses. You can do that with anything. And so it's such a hugely powerful tool. And as I say, it doesn't have to take a long time.
Now, why doesn't it have to take a long time? Because you go to some psychologists and psychiatrists, some people have been in therapy for a decade or on a cocktail of, drugs to help them address their issue. So how is NLP so effective so quickly?
So this is where it does get controversial.
Okay.
There are always, when it comes to any kind of psychology, psychiatry, neuroscience, there are obviously different camps of opinion. And NLP isn't always recognized by all the groups, which is why it isn't as mainstream as it could be. From all the study and my work on neuroscience, the reason NLP can be really effective and talking therapies or sometimes the drugs can't be, is because of the fact you are working at the neuro level. And sometimes it's at the subconscious level. So you are replanting those memories, you're re-changing the emotional response. When you just talk about stuff, you're talking at a conscious level. And therefore you're not working on what's going on underneath. Now, sometimes talking is enough to release things. Absolutely. Like every modality, every therapy has its application, and it depends on the individual and the problem. But a lot of this is the world according to Pippa, so not everyone will agree with me, but a lot of the psychologies and psychiatric approaches are based in studies from the 60s, 70s, 80s. At that time, we always thought that the brain was fixed. We thought that, you grew up and that was it. You could never change anything. This is why I love neuroscience. Neuroscience teaches us, and with the advances we've had in neuroscience, it shows us that the brain is constantly changing, learning, evolving. We are not fixed. Our behaviors, our abilities, even just to learn a language, everyone goes, when you can't learn a language when you're older, you can. You can do anything because we've realized that there's a thing called neuroplasticity, which is the abilities of the brain to keep learning, to keep evolving, to keep growing. And so NLP is based on the neuroscience end of that spectrum of theory, which says you can change, you can grow, you can evolve. A lot of psychology and psychiatry isn't. It's based on these older theories where, you had to talk about it. There's a dream. Often it's your mum's problem. It's I shouldn't say that, but it's the stereotypes come through, and that's why you can spend years in therapy and not make breakthroughs, because it's not designed for that kind of behavior. It's not designed to change your behavior. It's designed for you to get it out of there and find the reason why, but not, okay, here's the reason why, but how do I change that? And that's why NLP and neuroscience-based therapies, I think, are so much more powerful.
Something I've been told when I started looking at NLP and talk to this Marine who does is, he's like, if you really get honest with ourselves, there's a lot about the brain we just don't know. And that just seems, strange to me after all this time we've been studying. Is that really the truth, Philippa, that even with all this science and medicine, that there's a lot about the brain, how it works, that we still don't understand?
Absolutely. And this is why the field of neuroscience is so important, because it's making those leaps and boundaries. But neuroscience is a very young science in comparison to all the other ones.
Okay.
And that's because firstly, how do you study a brain? Back in the day, the way we learnt the body was cutting up cadavers. And then by that point, the brain's dead. So you don't have the synapses, you don't have the chemicals, you don't have the interaction. So you can say, oh, here's all, this is the map of the brain, but you can't really see how it's all interlinked. With modern technology, though, we have our scans, we have different tests, we can start to see how those links are being made. And as the more we do, the more we learn, the better we can deal with it. But science is, I love all things. I think science is amazing, but to get change in the scientific community also needs a lot of peer review. It needs a lot of studies. It needs a lot more time spent to it. And neuroscience is doing that, but it's had less time to do as much as the other ones have done because it's such a new science. And so we are every day learning more and more. In fact, I was at the University of Leicester about 6 months ago, helping them with a veteran study on PTSD. And they're doing based on eye movement and mapping to the brain again. And this is a new study. And it's based on stuff that we've learned already from NLP, from another therapy called EMDR, which is all around trauma therapy and eye movement. But this stuff, again, is only 10, 15 years old, which in the science community is not old. And so there is skepticism, there is disbelief, but also there is not a lot of that quantitative data that you look for in the science community to go, yes, this is definitely right. And so, yes, there's still so much we don't know, but we are learning more and more every day. And I, think in another 10, 15 years time, I'd hope that people go, yeah, I get it now. Like, we get the brain, we know what it's doing, we know how to solve it, we know that we can do this for PTSD, we can do this for phobias, we can, that's the way it should be going.
Well, let's talk about the word now. You're doing this now. You went down this path. You've studied neuroscience. You've done several certificates about this and studied extensively about it. So you're in this now. How's your experience been watching somebody? I'm not asking you to name names, but say a client comes to you and they've tried these other methods and modalities, and they're like, I still need help. I'm still not where I want to be, and this is not working. How do you treat that? I won't say the word patient, but how do you treat that person? How do you treat that person to connect with them and move them through the NLP healing process with what you know?
Really good question. And again, it's actually something I hear a lot, which is I've tried everything. It doesn't work. I've tried everything. With any kind of application of therapy, it is about what's called the therapeutic alliance. It's the trust between you and the person. I use NLP. I also use clinical hypnotherapy. I use neuroscience coaching. I use emotional change therapy. I have a whole range of toolboxes. And what I tend to find is often the first session might just be talking. It's them getting them, but also with everybody, and this goes back to what I said at the start about people that, the concern, the anxiety around their own behaviors. Often the problem that someone comes to you with, and so I often find that I just need to get them to a more relaxed state in the first instance so that they can really go with the problem. So, and to do that, I use clinical hypnotherapy a lot of the time because it's very gentle, it's very non-invasive. I like to call it a hypno nap. You just sit the chair, you don't have to do anything, but you're in full control at all the times. So you're hearing me, you're hearing the words I'm saying, and it's taking effect in your subconscious, but it's just basically reducing the stress level. And that's usually often the first step I'll have. And that is just to reduce their overall anxiety so we can get to the problem. And I had somebody who came to me for insomnia.
Oh, wow.
And they said they hadn't slept, basically never had a good night's sleep for years. And they were in the 60s now. But what the first thing she said to me was, oh, I think it's the menopause. I was like, okay, but you're in your 60s and you told me you never slept. So I feel it's not just the menopause. But that was the story. That was the narrative that she wanted. So we did the first session and we talked about some other things. And I said, oh, it turns out she liked to write. So I said, try some journaling, just write down your thoughts. And the next session she came back and went, I just remembered when I was a child, I was abused in my bedroom. So the reason she can't sleep and has never been able to sleep is because the bedroom never ever felt like a safe place. And so you got to the root cause, but you have to, I mean, that only took a couple of sessions to get to that. Once we got to that, we know what the problem is, and then we can do the reframing. We can work through the trauma, and again, quite quickly now, because we know what it is, we know the memory is, we can move on for it or repaint it or just release it. But it always starts with getting that person to a place where they are comfortable to share. And that there's no fixed timeline for that, really. But that
was my next question, because a lot of times, I don't know how the UK works, but in the US, a lot of times the insurance company will tell you have a certain number of appointments, and then when those are done, you either have to reapply for more treatment, or hey, you're just done for now, you should be fixed. So it causes problems. I'm not saying that every situation is like that here in the US, but I have been told that happens. So you don't really put a time limit on it.
No, not so. What I ask for from people I work with is a 3-month commitment. And in my experience, 3 months have been enough to get to the bottom of the cause and to work on it and to get into a point where they can either walk away going, actually, do you know what? I know what it is, I don't need you, or they can choose to continue, but actually we've now got more structure because we know where the problems are, we know how to move forwards. The same problem in the UK. I mean, I think it's a universal issue around mental health It is not treated in the same way a broken leg is treated. You know, there isn't a set timeline for dealing with these problems. My my personal gripe with the NHS on mental health is they tend to make everyone do an online CBT course first of all. Now, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is great for some things. If you've got a mild or low depression, it can be really good. If you're in the deep pits, if it's trauma, it's no good. But also, you need to again have that therapeutic alliance. You need to have the buy-in. And the NHS says you should do this course. I think it's like 6 or 12 weeks, and then you can apply to the next step. But when you're in a really dark place, showing up to an online course, often recorded, doing these exercises that you have no interest in, it doesn't serve you. And so there's so many people who don't have good experience with that. Again, CBT is great in the right situation, but not as a one-stop shop fits all. And so it is an issue. I mean, conversely, I have had a couple of, I had a domestic abuse person, 4 sessions, because she was so ready to be over it. She was so ready to move on that actually all I had to do was give her the tools and she was done. I had a guy who had actually a lady who had a phobia of heights. That took about 6 sessions. You know, so it doesn't have to be a lot. But I don't like to make promises that I can't keep. But 3 months generally is enough to go, okay, you and I either we figured out we trust each other, it's the right relationship, or I'm not the right person, which is also okay. But I can find the right person for you, and we've got enough to get you to that base level where you know what the problem is, you can acknowledge the problem, and hopefully we can let it go, or we know how to let it go, and we can figure out how much more we need to do. So 3 months is kind of my golden rule.
What's it like getting somebody on day 0, month 1, and then taking them through the process and seeing how their lives change right in front of you? Does that fuel your purpose that you were looking for post-military service? What's Philippa feeling like in her state as she's doing this for people?
I love it, and I think it's a privilege. It really is to be able to do it. But I tell you what, I sit there and sometimes you don't see the change for a while. And I had an Afghan refugee I worked with, and he didn't change. Like I couldn't see the change, and it was like week 4 and week 5. I was like, what if what if I just can't do it? And then like, you know, week 6 suddenly like I'm okay, and it was just suddenly that it all come together. But you know, he was dealing with some stuff, and he was, you know, suicidal, and you know, Afghanistan, as you and I both know, is a complicated country anyway at the best of times. But I think also it's relief, which is probably a very selfish reaction there, but which, like, thank goodness this is not another statistic. Like, this person isn't going to do something terrible, or, you know, thank goodness they haven't fallen foul of the system. So there's definitely a relief there, but it's such a privilege to be able to do it, and it's such a privilege to have had the time to find this for me, because again, if you'd asked me about therapy 10 years ago, but like, I don't need therapy, who needs therapy, what's therapy, that's just talking shit, isn't it? And in my own evolution, growth into maturity, recognizing that we all need help sometimes, and it doesn't matter what for. And if I can help, then that's brilliant.
You've done this for a while. You started a podcast. As a podcaster, I wanted to ask, you know, what was the purpose behind that? I checked it out. Very interesting subject matter. What got you into doing podcasting, Philippa?
So originally, I thought I was going to be sharing neuroscience stuff. That's my thing I love. And then I realized that not everyone loves neuroscience stuff the way that I do. As I was searching for guests, and I started talking to people about what I was thinking about, and it, you know, that iterative journey of like, what am I going to do? And it very soon became apparent that for me, it was about telling people stories of why they do what they do, how they got there, but particularly, so many people have survived extraordinary things, and these are ordinary people. And I wanted to have a platform to tell those stories, so that they're acknowledged, they're heard, but also because someone can listen to that and go, okay, it's not just me. Like they've got through this, so I can too. And yes, if it's appropriate, I'll throw in some neuroscience stuff because I can't help myself. But really, it is about the other person's journey, and why they do what they do, and the shifts that they've made to get where they are.
As you go through, and I really like this because you said that you're still trying to know who Philippa is. Do you feel that you know yourself any better? It seems like, to your point, you're just kind of expanding as your mind changes as you go through all these, you know, situations and happenings. But I do want to ask, like, what do you think is next for you? What are you going to do next?
Take over the world. No.
Well,
I,
maybe.
spread love, positivity, all that cheesy stuff. So I'm in my 40s now, and I do believe I've been incredibly privileged in my life. And I have traveled extensively. I have served my country, served my community. I have amazing family and friends. For me, it is about enjoying life. Like the selfish part is I want to enjoy my life. And to do that, I realize I need to have an element of service. No matter what I do, I need to feel like I'm adding value to someone somewhere. I need to do things for myself. So I have a game I play. It's called Extreme Day Trips. And it's basically how far can I go in one day for as little as possible. I do that for me. I do it on my own. Sometimes like my friend will come or my husband will come, but he hates flying. So not that often, but that's for me. That's for me to go and learn about another culture, try out another language, maybe have some sun in winter, which is what I've managed to do. So that's part of my growth. And then the last part really is, how do I apply what I know to people I love? So my husband, my family, what do they need to thrive as well? And I have this strong belief that the you give more, you make more. And that's the thing, and not just financially, but in terms of wealth and health and everything. And interesting enough, I think I read this recently that wealth comes from, I think, the Latin or the Greek, which actually means it actually was about your physical health in the past. And so I think if you look at life holistically, it is about finding that path where you are physically in a good place, mentally, spiritually, financially, all of those things. But that shouldn't be on your own. That should be with community. That should be with people. And that's kind of where I'm trying to get to.
All right. I like a lot of that. And I definitely agree with you. The people that are more giving seem to have a more complete life than those who do not. Um, how can people connect with you to either follow your podcast or seek services if they're in your area of operation and connect with you, Philippa?
Yeah, I'm Philippa Bagley on everything you can find probably. So put my name in and it will come up on one of the different social platforms. The podcast is called Journey to Purpose, again, on nearly all the podcast platforms I could find. I'm actually do a lot of work online. So I have clients in Australia and the US. I have one in Hawaii, which completely ruins my time zone calculations.
Wow.
Yeah, so anywhere, but please, I mean, again, I don't have to be a client to have a conversation. It's just sometimes you just want to say hello and have a chat. I love that. So thank you.
Well, I'm getting my passport updated this year, and if I was tinkering about going over to the UK, Partington's from the Manchester area. I want to find out my lineage, and I'm like, I'm going to go to Sunderland, but now I'm committed.
Good.
It'd be really great to take in a game and say hello and have a cup of tea with you. Um, I've learned so much from our conversation, and I keep telling people that you can change your life at any time you want. You can reprogram yourself, and it's just nice to hear that it's actually happening. You're actually doing it. What do you want to tell somebody as we close this down if they're doubting themselves and they're listening and they're in their doubt, they're in their valley? What can they do right now to kind of see a way out?
I think first of all is we all have doubts. We all have those, if I always think if you haven't got imposter syndrome, you probably are a natural imposter, because, we all have that. You can acknowledge the doubts, that's fine, but then go, well, what have I achieved to this date? Look around the life that you have, the people you have, the friends, and try to start focusing on the good things. Our brain is wired to be negative, to protect us, but it doesn't serve us anymore. And if you struggle on your own to find those positives, and reach out to a friend in the first instance and go, look, I feel like I'm not in a good place. I feel like I can't do anything right. Sit with me, remind me of the good things, have that conversation. But the main thing is to remember that no matter how low you are, no matter how many dark places you've been to, you are never alone. But also the things that we do in our lives that we have shame for, they are never as bad as we think they are. We are our worst criticism, if you can't believe that, again, you need someone else to tell you that as a starting point, to make them realize that none of us are perfect, but very few of us are as bad as we think we are.
Sure. I want to thank you for coming on and talking with me. I have learned a whole lot. Sometimes you're talking, I'm like, wow, that's why that happens. And it's just the power of the mind to control, how you feel and your outcome is something that I think I need to definitely learn more about. I just want to thank you again for coming on and talking with me.
Thank you, Trev. It's been a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So again, UK, from across the pond, as we say here in America, Philippa Bagley, who served Queen and Country at the time, and now has transitioned and found her way to keep serving. It's a common theme in our community. And so again, I'm going to have the links to Philippa's podcast and her website and Oscar Mike Radio show post. Philippa, thank you for coming on. And as we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission in flight.
The biggest fear Gold Star families have, that their child will be forgotten.
We need to never forget freedom wasn't free.
It's the fact that they give us the life we have now. We should remember them and give thanks to them.
If I can be a part of something today that's going to make the surviving family of any of these veterans, these heroes, feel better tomorrow, then it's worth it.
That one wreath symbolizes one family that was able to smile because of the generous donations.
To sponsor a wreath and honor a veteran, visit wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinista One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.